Okay, so thank you for your patience. We're going to go ahead and get restarted again. So my name is Felicia Flores. I'm with the County of San Mateo, and I'm the coordinator for the Management Talent Exchange program. This will be my second program cycle. So I'm joined by two of our awesome alumni, Abby Vieser with the City of San Mateo, part of our 2017 cohort, and then Gabe Aponte, County San Mateo, from the 2011 cohort. So we're going to go over some program information, and then we will do some testimonials. So I'll do a little interview of the two alumni. Then we'll go into more program specifics, answer any questions you have, and then kind of wrap up and talk about what's next if you're still interested in being part of the program. In terms of questions, feel free to type them into Skype, and we can go ahead and answer those as we go along, or there'll be time at the end. And during the Q&A part, if you want to mute yourselves and just ask questions, you're more than welcome to do that as well. So you see here, this is just our agenda, the overview, testimonials, details, QA, then the wrap-up. So first, just a brief program overview. So MTEP is a unique program. It first started in 2005. So it's intended for professionals that are interested in supercharging their careers, and agencies who are interested in getting additional work done and help foster regional talent. And actually on the call today, we have both people that are interested in being participants in the program, and we also have agencies that are looking to host individuals. So we're going to be covering kind of both parts today. So there'll be a mix of questions and information being shared. And just quickly to go over vocabulary, just so we're on the same page. So participants, those are people that would be participating in the exchange. So for instance, Abby and Gabe were participants in the program. Their home agency, so Abby's home agency is the City of San Mateo, but she went to Redwood City during her exchange. So Redwood City is the host agency. So we have the participants, we have the home agency, which is the agencies where the participants are employed, and then the host is the agency that sponsors and hosts that participant. So moving on to components. So MTEP, it's a 3-month exchange running from September to December. In addition to the exchange period, there is a kickoff in August, and that's where the participants will meet their host agency manager supervisor. In addition to that, there are also 2 learning forums where the cohort participants get together and get a chance to network and learn about a certain topic. And then finally, at the end of the program is a graduation event. And that is for participants and their home agency supervisors and the host agency. So we like to celebrate and acknowledge all of the players in MTEP. So that is hosted towards the end of December after the exchange is completed. So those are the basic components. Ideal candidates and host. So the program is really inclusive. We do not limit it to any specific classification. So there's no requirement to be a manager or a management analyst. We do kind of look for those star performers. So those people that are ready to take that next step in their career and their development. And typically, the assignments are management level, so management analyst type work to program manager work. So we typically look for people kind of in that classification so that the assignment is a bit of a stretch, but not too much of a stretch. But certainly we accept applications from all individuals that have approval to apply. In terms of the host who we look for, so we look for agencies that have a specific project and assignment in mind, so they have kind of the scope mapped out, and they're also available and willing to provide coaching to that individual, and they also have the space and capacity to host that individual in that work environment for the 3-month period. And definitely a big part of being host is being organized and giving feedback. So we actually are in the process of creating tools so that hosts are prepared for when the participant arrives. And after this is over, I'll go ahead and send some information to the folks on the call. And part of that will be just examples of types of assignments that have been completed by MTEP participants. There is a flyer on the website and a list of all the projects that have been completed by former participants, just so you get a sense of like the type of work that those assignments entail. I know I'm talking kind of fast. There'll be time for questions later, and we'll go into more details just to give you kind of a brief overview of the program. So like I said, candidates, we're looking for star performers, but there are no minimum requirements, so no educational or classification requirements. And for hosts, we're looking for people that have a specific assignment in mind and that are willing to coach and work with this individual for 3 months and give them the resources they need to be successful in their exchange assignment. Moving on to the administration piece, we're going to go more into depth about this later. But in terms of administration, there's an online process for participants and then an online questionnaire for host agencies. And we'll go into exactly what that application process is towards the end. There is a $1,000 fee for host and for participants. So if Abby was going to Redwood City, then San Mateo would pay $1,000 to have Abby partake in the program. And similarly, the city of Redwood City would pay $1,000 to host Abby. If the city of San Mateo said we're going to send Abby to Redwood City, but we'd also like to receive a participant to help us with a project in parks, then $1,000 would be waived. And we'll go more into that later. But it's a pretty great fee, especially for hosts, to have someone come and work in your office for that small fee. And that just covers program administration, so putting on the events and the graduation gifts and that type of thing. The thing that is a little bit different this year in terms of administration is that we are piloting with some agencies in the East Bay. So far, we have the Dublin. We have some. What's that? Sorry, is there?
I think we lost our
view. Is the fee new? So no, the fee has been in place, I think since the inception of the program, if I'm correct. We did talk about changing the fee, but the $1,000 is pretty sufficient to cover all of the program cost. So that is, yeah, not new. Yeah, thanks. Okay. So like I was mentioning, we're partnering with folks in the East Bay. We have the Dublin San Ramon Services District that will be hosting folks. We have the city of Fremont, who's also interested in piloting with us. And then we have Dublin and Hayward that we're in discussions with right now. So we're expanding past just San Mateo County and Santa Clara County and their agencies inside. So we're really excited about that expansion because it'll bring new opportunities to the participants and build new partnerships with agencies outside of our immediate network. Okay, so last part in this section, program benefits. So for the participant, it's a really great experience all around, and you'll hear a little bit about it from Abby and Gabe. But I had one participant tell me that the 3 months felt like over a year's worth of experience and learning. So it's really great. Like I mentioned before, it supercharges your career. It helps you build new skills, form new relationships. Definitely a huge networking opportunity in terms of the folks in your host agency, but then also the other MTEP participants who are also kind of the leaders in their organization and those kind of rising stars. You receive coaching and mentoring from the host agency, and typically those are folks in higher level positions. So you get coaching from city managers or assistant city managers or department heads or deputies. So it's a really great opportunity for participants to connect with those people in the organization. You also get to keep track of trends in local government, so like what things are coming up in agencies other than your own. You just kind of get to see what other folks are going through and working on. So for the host, you get to kind of maximize your organization's capacity by bringing in someone in for 3 months that is one of those star performers. You do get a chance to have some of those higher level assignments that are on your to-do list completed finally, so kind of getting to those projects that need extra support. So it's really great for hosts that have that space capacity to coach someone to complete that work. It's trying to read my notes here. So it's a really low-cost strategy for staff development. So the folks in your office will be working with that participant, and that'll help in kind of their own growth. You get to help foster regional talent, and we have seen where a lot of the participants have gone on to work for the agency that hosted them. For instance, we had someone from Burlingame who went to Menlo Park to work in HR, although he was working in Burlingame in Parks and Rec, and now he works in Menlo Park, actually, and in housing. So it definitely gives you exposure to different agencies and different types of work that you may not know. And Menlo, they got really lucky because they got Mike to work on their onboarding kind of revamp, and now they have a housing program manager. So they got really lucky in that one. But then that also leaves Burlingame to kind of foster their staff and see who's able to step up and take on Mike's role. So it's kind of win-win for both. And then the host also gets the chance to mentor kind of these emerging leaders and getting to share your organization's story with other folks, so that's really exciting. And then for the home agency, it is tough for home agencies to say, yes, we're going to let Gabe go for 3 months when he's our superstar, but really it's a succession planning initiative for those agencies. It's an investment in that employees development and employee engagement. And the home agency also gets to kind of build their current staff by that vacancy left by the participant. So if Gabe were to be gone in the office, then someone else is going to have to step up to take on some of his assignments and either work at a class, or the assignments would be spread out so folks would get an opportunity to work on different types of projects. So other folks get a chance to step up. And then it also, for home agencies, gets to demonstrate how you value development and support your staff. Okay, so I know that was a lot of information. I feel like I just talked for a whole hour. So now we're going to hear from Abby and Gabe. So I'm just going to go ahead and ask them some questions, and certainly if you have questions for them, go ahead, type it in, and we'll get to those. First question, I'll start with Abby. Can you please tell us a little bit about your experience in MTEP?
Okay. Yeah, so I think as she's mentioned, my home agency is the City of San Mateo. When I joined MTEP in 2017, I was the business manager in our Parks and Recreation department. I went and worked for the City of Redwood City. That opportunity, I kind of expressed an interest in either working in like a city manager's office or learning more about finance, because I'd been in an operating department for a long time. I was looking for a little support department experience. And so I ended up working. My boss, I guess you could say Redwood City, was the assistant city manager / administrative services director who oversaw finance and human resources. So as a result, I had some projects in the city manager's office, and I had some projects within the finance group. So I got lots of different experience through my placement there in Redwood City.
Awesome. Okay. And Gabe, can you tell us a little bit about your experience?
Yeah, so my home agency is San Mateo County Human Resources Department. I was placed with the City of South San Francisco's Public Works Department. When I applied, I didn't express an interest in anything in particular, so I was pleasantly surprised. I know nothing about public works, but that was, I guess that's the whole point of the program, right? To kind of make you stretch, make you grow. So when I was with Public Works, I worked on a lot of different things. So I worked on a sewer lateral ordinance. To be honest, I didn't even know what a sewer lateral was when my first day. So I had the ground running on all of these things. So I had to work on drafting a new ordinance. And then probably my biggest project was designing a new water rate system. So they had been charging the same amount for many years, so they wanted to put together a new water rate system that encouraged conservation. So that was a big one for me, and it was really neat because at the end of my 3 months, there was actually a city council study session. In my final weekend, we were kind of building up to that to get all of that ready. So that was really neat, and they did end up implementing after we left. So that was really nice to be a part of that. And I also worked on a shopping cart ordinance. South City at the time had a big problem with a lot of abandoned shopping carts everywhere, so we worked on drafting a new ordinance to address that issue.
Awesome. That sounds like a busy 3 months with all those ordinances. Okay, so next question for Abby. So what do you feel like you learned as a result of your experience, and how did you think that impacted your home agency?
I guess I didn't actually go too in-depth into my assignments, but what I ended up doing in Redwood City, again, I did a little bit of everything, but I did some finance policy development, but I also ended up kind of helping. They were working through cannabis regulations at the time, so I ended up kind of jumping on board with that and helping out with that, even though it wasn't necessarily part of the original assignment. I think what I learned from the experience is that I could integrate myself into another city organization pretty easily, and I do think that's probably an important part of this program, because although they had some things defined and they had some assignments they had in mind, it also kind of depends on the talents you bring and kind of what you can help the organization with. So I kind of realized that I was flexible and I could kind of adapt to what they needed to get done. And so then I got some really great experiences because there were some things that weren't even on their list that we kind of found out needed to be done, and my skill set worked for that, so we kind of helped them get that done as well. But I think also other things that helped me was I had been at the same organization for a long time, and so it was great to see a new organization, see kind of a different lens, see a different supervisory styles. I mean, I had a different supervisor. I worked with a lot of different managers in that organization, so I got to see some of their styles and how they work in Redwood City. I learned a lot about how their city manager's organization works, kind of compare that to my organization, and actually when I came back, I did like a whole little sit down with our city manager's organization, even though I'm not in that office, to just kind of share what I learned and talk about things that I thought were connected, because it also showed me how similar Redwood City and San Mateo really are, especially in the issues that we deal with. So it's kind of that remembering that we're kind of all in the same boat. We're dealing with a lot of the same things. And that's kind of probably another big thing I learned from that, was to remember to do my networking and work with the other folks in other cities, partly just to share those resources, to go, oh, what are they learning in Redwood City on the same issue that we're dealing with? We need to chat about that and talk about it. But it was also just I hadn't been networking and working with other folks, and it was great to kind of have this opportunity to focus on that, because you're not as absorbed in your day-to-day tasks as you are, you know, like when you're in your work, you're just kind of working through your tasks. You had a little room to breathe and could kind of think about what you want to do, who you want to talk to, what you want to learn from folks. So I met a lot of new folks, built a lot of new relationships, and so that was probably the biggest takeaway that I had, is just the different folks I met, and the focus on building those relationships within the local government sector.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you, Abby. What about you, Gabe? What do you feel like you learned as a result of your experience in MTEP?
Well, I definitely do feel like a much more complete professional going through the program. And the reason I say that is because in the work that we do, in human resources, which is my home agency, we're very inward focused. We're a support department to other departments. I went to a city, different level of government, and a department, public works, that's very public facing. So we're actively dealing with the public every day. They're coming into our lobby, they're complaining about potholes, they're calling in about broken streetlights. So I got to see that up front, up close and personal. So it was really neat to see, the impact we're having out there each and every day. So that was refreshing for me. And then when I came back, it did give me a much more holistic understanding of our business and local government, what we do. We have the cities, we have the county. I got to work a little bit with some state agencies while I was there, so it's really neat to see kind of the interconnectedness of it all and how we all work together to achieve similar outcomes. And I think that's important because something that happens to us, unfortunately, at times is that we become siloed in our department or perhaps in our line of work, and we don't sometimes reach out to others. MTEP is really good at addressing that, and that it forces you to do that. So specifically in public works, we had a lot of joint projects with San Bruno, so had to talk a lot to my San Bruno counterpart. And we had a project that we actually had to deal with the county public works. So you go to meetings with these folks and you see how you have common interests. So you have to work with them, and that's really helpful. But I would say kind of my long-term takeaway from the program, it gave me a lot more self-confidence. So whenever I'd have a project, I'd kind of get nervous or kind of come from a place of fear because I didn't know if I could do it or if it was perhaps too difficult for me. But going through this project really gave me a lot more self-confidence. I didn't even know what a superlateral was, but we ended up doing a project around it, and it turned out really well. So it really changed my approach. Now when I come back, I kind of have the attitude, yeah, I can do that. That's not a problem. We can figure it out. So MTEP is really heavy on figure it out. You will learn to figure a lot of things out, and that's only going to serve you better when you come back to your home agency, I think.
Awesome. Thank you. That's great. Okay, so my next question for you two are, what challenges did you encounter either before or during or after your MTEP exchange?
Okay, guess I'll go first.
Yeah.
So I think the biggest challenge for me, I think Felicia knows, was actually getting into the MTEP program. I had an interest in doing it. I came to the initial session that Felicia hosted on participating. But when I discussed it with my supervisor, there wasn't a lot of interest in me going. And she wasn't necessarily open to that. And so for us, the hurdle became what kind of backfill could we have for my position while I was gone, and backfill that my supervisor could be comfortable with. So unfortunately, it took a little time to try to figure that out. So I do encourage you, if you're interested, to start talking with your supervisor sooner than later, because again, it took us a while to find someone who could potentially move from another department in the organization and backfill my duties enough to kind of satisfy my supervisor's need to have somebody there. And again, I take that as I'm doing a really good job. She didn't really want to let me go. There was plenty of work to do. But we found someone who kind of met her needs in terms of being there while I was gone, so that then I could go to the program. And luckily, Felicia kind of accepted me towards the end so that I could still get into the program after kind of working through that. So that was kind of the biggest hurdle, was kind of getting it all squared away with my organization. And I would say, if you don't have support initially from your supervisor, there may be others in the organization who can support you and potentially find ways to get your supervisor comfortable with that. Because again, I think I had some champions other places in the city who kind of helped look around to find the resources we needed. So that's kind of what helped me, was tapping my other folks to say, hey, can you help me figure out a way to make this happen?
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. And it does come up a lot with folks on, I really want to participate, but my manager isn't excited about losing me for 3 months, but it's how do we flip that to make it an opportunity for the agency and the participant. And towards the end, we're going to go over some tips for you. And Gabe, what about you? Did you face any challenges before, after, during your exchange?
Yeah, so before, I think my biggest challenge was just I was kind of anxious about the whole thing. My host agency was really good in that they actually met with me before I even came through the door to kind of just walk me through everything, kind of set expectations. So that was really nice. But yeah, I kind of share Abby's feelings about the transition plan when you're about to head out the door. It's really important that you have your responsibilities lined out. Because when you move to your assignment, you really can't be doing two jobs at once. You can't be going back and still talking to your old coworkers about, cover this, cover that. It's really going to take away from your experience, and it's not setting you up for success. So I had to do a little bit of that the first week. I wish I hadn't, but that was a challenge for me because then you're not focusing 100% on your new assignment. So you want to make sure you do that and make sure you outline all your responsibilities and who's doing what. And the program does give you plenty of time to do that. So yeah, I would just start doing that. Like once you get in, start looking at your major areas of responsibility and start identifying perhaps who can backfill for you and have that conversation with your manager. But yeah, those are probably the biggest ones for me too.
And can I just add, I think I had even asked Felicia at the time, can you do this program part-time? Because that was something my supervisor immediately asked is, well, can you just do it part-time? Can you work here part of the time and do this part-time? And Felicia's like, no, it's a full-time program. And I really appreciate that it's a full-time program, that you can't do part-time, because I do think, like Gabe said, it's really hard to focus on your other job and the new job. You have to really be able to leave it behind for those 3 months so you can focus on getting the most out of your experience in your MTEP placement. So I do think that's really important, and I appreciate that Felicia's like, no, you have to do it all 5 days a week.
Yeah, and we feel like that really benefits the participant because they really have to immerse themselves into this new placement, and they're not working 100% at their host agency and 100% at their home agency. And then it's also benefits the host because then they're getting this individual's full attention and commitment for that period. So yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. Might have been a question that came up later. So my next question for you too, what advice do you have for folks that are interested in participating in MTEP? Abby?
So I do think, as you're thinking about it, think about what you really want out of the program. I think kind of knowing what you want going into it is helpful. Because again, it's not quite like an internship, but it's a little bit like, you're a new person in the organization. They have some ideas of what you can do, but you can also help shape your experience. So I think if you have a general sense of what you want and what you want to get out of it, it's going to help you get more out of the program. I'll answer that question.
Okay.
So I think, I do think trying to know what you want to get out of it, because I also think, again, I don't think it's a challenge, but you do have to make sure you are finding opportunities. Work's not just going to fall in your lap. So although you have some tasks, you want to go after tasks that you think might be interesting and helpful, or go to meetings that you think are helpful, set up one-on-one lunches with people that you want to meet with. All of that is kind of up to you. You've got to take the initiative. So I think you have to be ready before you go to figure out where your priorities are and what steps you want to take to get the most out of your experience.
Yeah. No, and just a tip for those that interview, that's one of the things that we're looking for. Like, what do you want out of the exchange? What are you looking to get? What are you looking to improve upon? And really, why do you want to be a part of the program? So yeah, that's good for folks to start thinking about. Yeah, what do you want out of it? And then it looks like Abby has a question. So how did you engage with the person that you exchanged with about backfilling your position?
Yeah, so that's where having the champions elsewhere in the city helped, because I didn't know who potentially could come backfill, but there was one or two other department heads who knew I was interested in participating and found somebody within their department. So it's actually through another department head that they've tapped somebody who was a management analyst within their part of the organization and said, yes, I'm willing to give my person over to your your boss so that they have a backfill. And there was a bit of negotiation about how much time that person was going to come. So that was part of the negotiations that went on. But in general, again, I didn't go seek out a person who could do it because I wasn't really sure who would fit the bill. But I think having, again, that other leaders in the organization kind of go, I think this person will help and I can let them go, worked for me in that situation. But I also think if I had asked that person directly, they might have been able to get the same thing. But again, it helps to have the supervisors buy in from the beginning. So that's why that person was able to come help me out, if that answers the question, right? I think that, is that clear?
Yeah, no, definitely. Okay, so let's see, a couple of people are tagging. Let's see if they have more questions for Miss Abby. Yes, okay, awesome. How does the placement process work? So we're actually going to go over that kind of in the next session when we go over the program details. Just hold on a few more minutes. We have a couple more questions, and then we're definitely going to go through the application and placement process. So Gabe, the question, what advice do you have for folks that are interested in participating?
Yeah, if you're interested, I think the sooner you can talk to your manager about it, the better. Now that I manage staff, I do understand the kind of the gut visceral reaction. I don't know. So, give them some time to work themselves through that, and you can really support, hopefully their eventual decision to let you go by letting them know how invigorating this program is. It's really refreshing. Even if you're not trying to promote, it really helps you see another another side of the public sector, and it can really give you a new lens on your current role, and you can come back and do it better than ever. Also, try to stress the value developmental opportunities for others who can take your job while you're away. So the sooner you can talk to your manager about it, make it a goal if you need to. And then the other piece of advice I would have too is that try to focus on competency areas that you want to address through this program. So a lot of folks kind of come to the program saying, well, I want to work in the budget office, right? Or I want to work in the city manager's office. So when I came into it, I didn't have that lens. I kind of had the attitude anywhere is fine, because what I really wanted to work on was project management. That was like my big thing. So then that's why I was assigned to public works. And even though maybe that wouldn't have been my first choice, but after going through it, it really was the right place for me, because it really helped me develop that. So if you kind of look at it from that lens too, it can be really valuable for you.
Okay, awesome. So next question is kind of on the other side. What advice do you have for host agencies and managers of participants?
So for host agencies, I do think it's important to have a good initial onboarding, and it's not necessarily has to be forever. You're meeting with this person all the time. But when I started Redwood City, the first day, I had a good list of kind of projects. My week was kind of scheduled in terms of who I'd start meeting with and kind of what meetings I was going to go to. And so there was a good general orientation to start, and some good project ideas so that I had plenty of things to kind of work through as I was there. The other thing is, I think Felicia recommends that you have a kind of buddy. And that was really helpful. So my manager, the supervisor at the organization at Redwood City, she was pretty busy. So it wasn't like she was going to be able to answer kind of basic questions and help me with just getting oriented to the organization. So she had kind of assigned a buddy who was within the finance department, and just was someone else who I could get to know, who I could ask kind of basic questions to, could kind of orient me to being in Redwood City. So that was really helpful to have that other person to bounce things off of, so you didn't feel like you were always having to bug your manager about things, that you could kind of have other people to start with. And then of course that helps build your network within the rest of the city as you get to know it. So having that buddy was really critical.
Awesome, thank you. And Gabe?
Yeah, definitely second the buddy system. Really important. You want to treat this person as a new employee, but bear in mind that you kind of want to do everything on a more accelerated timeline, because they're only with you for 3 months. Mm-hmm. So remember, my first week, we did a lot of the things that maybe a new employee would do like in their first month. So, they gave me tours of the different facilities that would be important for me to be working with. Like, we went to the wastewater treatment plant. I met everybody there like on my second day. we toured the finance department like the third day because I had to work on like the sewer rates. So I had to have like a liaison in finance. So that way, my manager was really great about telling me, you know, these are the folks that you're going to be working on, and you know, feel free to reach out to them and just go and do what you need to do. So that was really helpful because then everybody knew who I was, and they kind of had some background about it. So do that, and also for whoever the manager is going to be, the open door policy is really important. So even though I try not to overuse it, but anytime I was really stuck and my buddy wasn't around, I could approach my manager, and that was really cool.
Okay, awesome. Thank you too for sharing about your experience. Are there any questions from the folks on the call? If so, go ahead and unmute yourselves or type in. If not, we'll also have some time for questions at the end. Okay, we don't have anyone typing, so we will move on.
So I'm just going to add one thing.
Yeah.
So just to add clarification, I did have support from the city manager. So even though my boss, who was a department head, wasn't as supportive, I did have support from the city manager, which can be a little awkward, but it actually helped also make it. So that's why I say my champions in the city, so city manager being a very nice champion to have when you're trying to apply for a program like this. Because I think you actually have on there that ideally you could have the city manager give approval, right? At least in the application that when we applied.
Yes, yes. So, so in participating in the program, we'll get to this also. For participants, you need approval and a recommendation from your supervisor, and then from the executive of your department, whether that's the city manager or the county manager, but an official yes from the agency saying you're allowed to go to another agency for 3 months. Okay, so yeah, thank you for bringing that up. Okay, any last thoughts before we move on and go into program details? No? Okay, so if anyone has questions, feel free to type it in or shout it out, but we'll move on to some of the program details. So first being the timeline. So here's just an outline of some of the key dates. So May 3rd is the last day to submit applications, and this is going to be on the host and the participant side. It's really important that we get them in by May so that when we're doing interviews, we can start to see what placements might work for folks, or if we potentially need to do more outreach on our side to get hosts that meet the needs of the participants. Interviews will be held the week of May 20th. So depending on how many applications we get from participants, there'll be a screening process. It is competitive, so the folks that pass the screening will then be invited for interviews the week of May 20th, and folks will likely be city managers and department heads that are on that interview panel. After that, we'll be letting folks know about the status of their placement in June. So that's our goal. Last year, we notified folks in July, August timeframe, but we wanted to give folks more time to plan for the exchange. So that's why the timeline is kind of accelerated and why we're moving it up, even though the placement does not start till September 2nd. Like I mentioned before, there's going to be a kickoff event on August 15th, so we go over program details. Participants get to meet their hosts get to meet their participant. You get to talk about kind of the project that you'll be working on, and then you'll also get some tips from folks on how to proceed in the exchange. And the exchange is officially from September 2nd to December 6th, so that's the entire 3-month period. During that time frame, there's going to be 2 learning forums for the participants, and it's just a chance for them to get together, connect, and learn about a topic. We're still in the process of finalizing what those topics are going to be this year. The exchange ends December 6th, and then a couple weeks later we have the graduation. So that'll be a morning event where you'll come and folks that participate in the program will be recognized, and you'll get to hear some testimonials. So that's a really great event. So the kickoff and the graduation and the learning forums are all required of the participants. Okay. And then the timeline is also available on the website. Okay. So application details. So if you're still on the call, it looks like we lost a couple people that were like, no way, Jose, we're not doing that. But if you're still in the call, still interested in proceeding in the program, then this is the process. So for participants, the application process is a little bit more robust. So we ask you to submit a current resume. We ask you to have a recommendation form, and this is a PDF that's available on the website. So you will have your supervisor recommend you, sign off on it, and then have an executive sign off on that. You'll have them sign. You'll upload it into your online application. And then the last piece is filling out some supplemental questions. So those questions, it's already on the website if you wanted to take a look, but those questions includes describe your career goals and plans to accomplish them. What are your strongest professional skills and competencies? What skills would you like to develop? And then the final question is how will MTEP facilitate your long-term professional goals and those of your host agency? So just 3 questions. And in addition to the supplemental questions, we also ask you what functional areas you're interested in learning more about, and then what are your geographical preferences so that we can keep that in mind. So that's the process for participants. Like I said, it is online. The application is already up along with the PDF form, so you could go in, take a look at the questions, start to work on those. For the host agency, the application is also online. It's much shorter, so we really just need you to describe what the assignment is. So what type of project will they be working on, who will be their coach, and just at the very bottom, like who has given your agency approval to host someone. So that one's pretty straightforward, basic. Host agencies are able to submit multiple assignments. So if the City of Redwood City has 3 projects they want to work on, then they would just submit the 3 questionnaires with those details. And again, those are due May 3rd, and that's so that we can get everyone information so they have sufficient time to prepare. Okay, and then next up, so requirements and fees. So really basic requirements, approval. So the host needs approval from their city executive or county executive to participate. The participant needs approval from their manager and their city executive to participate. And then all parties have to agree to the guidelines. So the guidelines are posted on the website. They're fairly basic and straightforward. So you can go ahead and take a look at those, but for example, the host agency agrees to attend the orientation. They agree to assign a buddy to the participant. They will provide orientation and onboarding so that participant's successful during their assignment, and then they complete an evaluation of that individual. So it's pretty straightforward stuff. It's on the website if you want to take a look. And that's pretty much it in terms of the requirements. In terms of the program fees, we mentioned this before, so it's $1,000 per participant, $1,000 per host agency, but $1,000 is waived if you send and receive a participant. So some agencies do decide to do that. It is okay for agencies to just send or agencies to just host. There does not need to be a one-to-one exchange, even though the program name has exchange in it. So just something to keep in mind. And then the last kind of piece that's on this slide is participants remain employed by the home agency. So if Gabe is gone during September to December, he still has to do his open enrollment in October with the County of San Mateo. So, because he is still employed with that agency. So all personnel matters and that type of thing still remains with the home agency. So sometimes the host does need to communicate with that individual's supervisor during the exchange period. Do you want to add?
I will add, I think one of the things you recommended, which I think was helpful, was, if you're planning a major 3 to 4 week vacation or something during the exchange program, that's not a good fit, right? You shouldn't be taking big vacations or big time off because you're there at a new agency trying to experience that new agency. So not a great time for the vacation.
Right. Extended vacations, probably not. If there's like a couple days that you're planning to be out of the office because it is kind of during the holiday season, then that's fine. There was one individual at the 2017 info session that was like, what if I'm getting married? Am I allowed to take time off? And we said, absolutely not. You have to reschedule the wedding. But he actually participated and was able to make it work so that he still was able to complete his assignment and meet expectations despite having to take some time off. But definitely be thoughtful about that because you want to take advantage of your time with the host agency. And if you're requesting a lot of time off or extended periods of vacation during that period, then perhaps waiting until the next cohort. And the cohort does run every other year. So the next one will be in 2021. Okay. Any other thoughts before we move on?
You can ask her, answer her question still. That question about how does the placement work? Is that your next slide?
How does the placement work? Let me see if there's a slide for that. No. Okay. So I guess we should have gone over how does the placement work during this piece of the application. So how it works is after we screen and do the interviews, then we meet with the interview panel. We take a look at all the placements we received and the participants that we think are ready to participate in the program, and we do our best to match their interest with the placement. We look at geographically what will work for folks, and then we also look to see what skills the individual wants to improve upon and how that assignment will help them work on building those competencies. And also personality types. So we ask participants during the interview, like, what would your ideal exchange be? So they talk to us and say, well, I'd really like to have coaching from this individual, or I'd really like to work in finance to get more exposure to the budget. So we do our best to match the interest of the participants with the assignments. It's not an exact science, but we do our best to make the participant and the host agency happy with the choices. And so what happens if we have the city of Redwood City in mind for Abby? She's interested in finance and working in administration, and the city of Redwood City has something in finance and administration. So we go to Abby and say, Abby, you've been accepted to the program. This is the exchange we have in mind for you. Do you accept? And if Abby accepts that placement, then we notify the host agency that this individual has accepted, and we send them her resume, we send the supervisor's recommendation, we send her supplemental questions, and we write up some notes from her interview so that individual that's going to be her coach can get some information about Abby and start preparing for her onboarding. So I hope that answers the question about the placement, but if not, then please go ahead and let me know, and we'll try to rework it.
Hi. Hello. I have a meeting in 2 minutes.
Okay, we're going to be wrapping up.
Like I have to list it for like 50 people.
Okay, we'll be outside. Okay, so for a little bit of a time crunch, so the next question that was being asked is, with the pilot program with agencies outside the county, will county employees be placed with them? How do you anticipate it working? So yes. So for instance, if Gabe applied and he lives in the East Bay and is interested in getting more experience in Parks and Rec, then and City of Hayward had an opening, then we would place Gabe there, as long as he approves and that agency is willing to host him. So it'll be the same process. It'll just be with different agencies. So the host will be required to attend the events and participate in all of the program aspects as well. Okay. Are there any final questions before we wrap up? Okay. Final thing. So on the website, we have a ton of details. We also added a spot for contact us, and there's a listing of program alumni from different agencies. So if you're interested in talking to someone in an agency you're interested in going to, or an agency that you're currently in, then there's a listing of folks that have agreed to be contacted by host and prospective candidates. So please go ahead, check that out, or reach out to me. We'll go ahead and send the recording to you, along with some information about the program. So feel free to reach out. Sorry that we're having to cut this a little bit short, but hopefully you got some information that you needed to decide whether or not to participate in the program. So thank you so much for your time. We will be in contact shortly.